Hi, boys and girls. It's Miss Manning here. We are working on Module 5, Lesson 14, and we're on day 2. So you're going to have on your problem set question number 4 and 5 to work on with me. Remember, you can look at it yourself on your problem set, try to solve it, and then come back to the video and watch it for the problems that you're having. You don't have to watch the whole video and then do your problem set. The other thing that you're going to have today is you'll have your exit slip for today to show your teacher. With number 4, Mr. Johnson needs to buy sod for his front lawn, and we've talked about sod before. It's kind of like a carpet, but made with real grass that will grow in your yard. So if his yard or his lawn is 36 2/3 feet by 45 1/6 feet, how many square feet of sod will he need? Well, the square feet of sod that he's going to need for his whole yard is our whole. And our parts are the length and the width of his yard. And area is length times width, so we have to multiply our parts to find our whole. Now for part B, if you and you're going to take your whole, it says if the sod is only sold in whole square feet, how much will Mr. Johnson have to pay? So that means if I end up with something like 563 1/3, I can't buy 563 1/3. I can't buy 563 either, because then I have a 1/3 of a square foot that's not filled. So I would have to go up to the next biggest whole number, which would be 564. And then I am going to figure out the sod pieces. Now that's just an example, one I made up, but just know it has to go up to the next whole number. If you end up with saying the whole area, say you found the area to be 1,926, let's say that's your area that you found up here. I just made that up. They want you to find out how much you had to pay. Well, the first 1,000 square feet is 27 cents per square foot. So I'm going to take away 1,000 feet from here, which leaves me with 926. And I'm going to take that 1,000 times 27 cents or 27 hundredths. Now in the classroom, we would be doing this with our place value chart. Here, I'm going to kind of create one. So I'm taking 27 hundredths times the power of 10, and this would be essentially like 10 to the 3rd power. So my 2 is going to move 3 place values up the place value chart. It's going to be bigger in value because I'm multiplying it, and it's moving 3 places because of my zeros, or my power of 10. So this 2 goes from the tenths, not to the ones, not to the tens, but to the hundreds, because that is 1, 2, 3 place values. The 7 is going to go from the hundredths, not to the tenths, not to the ones, but to the tens. So it ends up costing him, for the first 1,000, $270. Now it says the next 500 square feet are 22 cents. So I'm going to take away 500 from here. And that's going to be 6, 2, 4. So I'm left with 426. So those 500 feet cost 22 cents. So I'm going to multiply it. I want copies of these 22 cents, but I need 500 feet. I need 500 copies of that. So we're going to multiply this. When we multiply by a decimal, we ignore the decimal while we're doing it. So 0 times 2, 0 times 2, 5 times 10, or 2 is 10. Now I'm done with the ones place. I'm going to go on to this tens place, even though it's the tenths, but we're ignoring that decimal. So 2 times 0. Oh, I forgot my placeholder 0. So that's my placeholder guy. 0 times 2 is 0. 0 times 2 is 0. 5 times 2 is 10. Now I add them all together. 0, 0, 0, 1, and 1. But now I can't ignore that decimal place. I had 2 place values after the decimal place, so I'm going to go down to my answer and make sure I have 2 place values after the decimal place and put it in there. So for the 500 square feet, it's going to cost 110 yards. But I still have this 426 square feet, And it says any additional square feet is 19 cents. So let's take 426 times 19 hundredths. 6 times 9 is 54. 2 times 9 is 18 plus 5. 8 plus 5 is 13, so 23. I'm going to erase that because that's getting a little confusing here. And then I have 4 times 9, which is 36, 37, 38. So now I'm done with the ones place because remember we ignore that decimal. Placeholder 0, don't want to forget that. 1 times 6, 2 times 1, and 4 times 1. Then I add them together. 4 plus 0, 3 plus 6, 8 plus 2, and 3 plus 4, 7 plus 1 more is 8. But don't forget, we had 2 places behind the decimal, so I need 2 places behind the decimal. So $80, and I gotta line up my decimals. There's actually decimals right here behind all of these because they were 0 cents. And now I add them all together to find out the total for what he pays, which then becomes my whole. 4, 9, 0, 8 plus 7. You know what? I'm going to put the 7 and the 1 together to make an 8 because I know my doubles. 8 plus 8 is 16. I'm going to put my 1s together to get 2, 4. So that would be the total cost for my made up total area. That's this whole from here. I made this number up to show you how you're going to multiply that out to figure out the total cost. So for problem number 5 on our problem set, Jennifer's class is making a quilt. There's 24 students. They each have a quilt square that's 8 inches on each side. But then when they sew it together, every edge of the quilt square will lose 3/4 of an inch. So there are 2 edges. So we're going to make 2 copies of that, which will be 6/4, which is equal to 1.5. So really the side lengths are going to lose 1.5 in area, which would be 8 minus 1 is 7. 7 minus 1/2 is 6.5 inches by 6.5 inches. But for part A, it's asking you, so that's one of the quilt squares. It's asking you to draw one way that the quilt squares could be arranged to make a rectangular quilt. So you could do this in many different ways, and we're going to have different answers, but you have to ask yourself, if I have 24 squares in here, what are my side lengths going to be? So if you could do one example might be 8 by 3, because if I have 3 rows here and 8 columns, then I would have 24 squares here. So that's one option, but there's more that you could have for your quilt. Then once you have your quilt side lengths, whatever you choose to draw, then you have to find the perimeter. So to find our perimeter, we have to take our length plus our width plus our width. But remember, if you decide to do the 8 by 3, it's not 8 is a side length. It's 8 squares. And each one of those squares from here to here is 6.5. And this one from here to here is 6.5. And down here is 6.5. So you have to take your side length, in this case 6, make 8 copies of 6.5. And if I did 3 here, then I would have 3 copies of 6.5 because it's 6.5 by 6.5. So then that's going, once you solve this, that's going to give you your width. When you solve that, that's going to give you your length so you can find the perimeter. Once you have the length and the width, you're able to find the area of the quilt because area is length times width. So the hardest part of this problem is figuring out what dimensions you want to make your quilt, making sure that you have 24 quilt squares inside there, And then the other hard part is just going to be doing that multiplication. That's all I have for you guys today. Thanks so much for joining me. And your exit ticket today is going to seem like a breeze compared to the challenging word problems that you've had for the last 2 days. You can review these videos anytime you need, and good luck.